The sound of Lily's song floated through the narrow street, brushing against the scent of roasted corn and city smoke. She was 12, but her voice carried the ache of someone twice her age. Her mother, Grace, lay in a small apartment 2 blocks away, pale, weak, and tethered to an oxygen mask that hissed like a fragile promise. The hospital bills had piled higher than hope itself, and the landlord's final notice lay on the table like a sentence no one wanted to read aloud. Lily didn't know how to fix it all, but she could sing. Every evening, after washing her mother's face and whispering, "I'll make you proud, Mama," she took her old microphone, the one her mom used when life was kinder, and stepped into the night. The street became her stage, the stars, her only spotlight. "Please help my mother," read the cardboard sign beside her feet. Below it, a single dollar note fluttered inside a chipped tin box, the same dollar she'd been saving from her first performance. She believed it was lucky. The city around her buzzed in indifference. People hurried past, shoes clicking against the pavement like a clock counting down. A few dropped coins without looking. Most just tightened their coats and walked faster. Still, Lily sang. Her voice rose and cracked and healed again in the same breath. She sang of lost love, of mothers who prayed in silence, of children who learned courage too soon. And sometimes, when her throat gave out, she'd close her eyes and imagine her mother's laughter echoing back. One evening, as a drizzle began to fall, a man in a charcoal suit stopped at the corner. He didn't fit there, not among the flickering lamps and weary vendors. His car, a sleek black sedan, idled nearby with headlights cutting through the mist. He watched quietly, his expression unreadable. Lily noticed him but didn't stop singing. She'd learned not to expect much from people who wore expensive shoes. But then, the man stepped closer. He bent slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lily," she whispered. "I'm singing for my mom. She's sick." The man nodded, his gaze falling on the tiny necklace around her neck, a simple silver locket shaped like a heart. Something flickered in his eyes. A memory, perhaps. A wound reopened. He reached into his pocket and dropped a folded note into her tin box. Lily's breath caught. It wasn't a coin. It was $100 bill. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, the man turned away, walking back into the mist. She stood there frozen, the rain kissing her cheeks like tears that didn't belong to sadness. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. When Lily returned home that night, she showed the money to her mother. Grace's eyes widened, her frail hands trembling as she touched the note. "Who gave you this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "A man in a suit," Lily said, smiling. "He saw my necklace. Then he cried." Grace's eyes clouded. She clutched her chest, her breath uneven. "Did he say his name?" Lily shook her head. "No, Mama. But I think he knew you." Grace looked toward the cracked window, the sound of distant rain blending with her tears. "Maybe," she murmured, "maybe miracles wear suits sometimes." That night, Lily fell asleep beside her mother's bed, her tiny hand resting over Grace's. She dreamed of a world where songs could heal, and love was currency enough. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The next morning arrived soft and grey, the city still half asleep beneath a layer of fog. Lily woke to the rhythmic sound of her mother's shallow breathing. The oxygen mask hissed, a fragile reminder that time was slipping faster than they could hold it. She rose quietly, tucked the $100 bill inside a small jar beneath her bed, and whispered, "Just a few more songs, Mama. We'll get there." Outside, puddles mirrored the morning sky. The same street corner waited, but today felt different, heavier, as if it carried a secret she wasn't ready to uncover. She plugged in her microphone, tested the static, and began to sing again. Her voice filled the cold air, carrying the warmth of her mother's heartbeat. She noticed familiar faces among the crowd, the flower lady from the market, the baker who always smiled but never stopped long. And then, again, that car. The same black sedan. parked across the street like a shadow that remembered her. The window rolled down halfway, and Lily saw him, the man from last night. His name, she would soon learn, was Ethan Cole, a self-made millionaire who built empires but lost sleep to memories. He listened again, motionless, while people around him moved like wind. Something in Lily's song, the purity, the ache, cracked open a door he had locked years ago. A name haunted his memory, Grace. A woman he once loved before ambition took everything else. He stepped out, holding a small white umbrella. The drizzle returned, gentle at first, then steadier. "You're here again," Lily said, her smile shy but hopeful. "I couldn't forget your song," he replied. "Or that necklace." Lily touched it unconsciously. "It was my mom's. She said it keeps love close, even when people are far." Ethan's throat tightened. That locket, he knew it. He had given it to Grace 12 years ago, promising forever. Back then, forever was shorter than either of them imagined. He knelt slightly to meet Lily's eyes. "Can I ask, what's your mother's name?" "Grace," she said softly. The sound of it shattered him. For a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. "Is she okay?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from the pain in Lily's voice. "She's sick. The doctors said she needs treatment, but it's too expensive." Ethan looked away, blinking fast. Guilt burned like fire behind his ribs. He wanted to speak, to confess the truth, that he had loved her mother once, that he left her for a life made of glass and greed, but the words stayed trapped. Instead, he said, "Can I meet her?" Lily hesitated. Strangers rarely cared that much, but something in his eyes made her nod. "Maybe tomorrow. She gets tired easily." He smiled faintly. "Tomorrow, then." That night, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse apartment overlooking the same city Lily sang in. The lights stretched endlessly, cold and silent. He poured himself a drink he didn't touch. On the table beside him lay an old photograph, a younger version of himself and Grace, standing beneath a Ferris wheel, laughter caught in motion. He hadn't looked at it in years. Now he couldn't look away. He whispered into the quiet, "Grace, I found her." Meanwhile, Lily returned home, humming a softer tune. Grace sat propped up by pillows, her eyes tired but curious. "You're glowing," she said. Someone listened again. Lily smiled. "He said he'd visit tomorrow." Grace froze, her pulse flickering. "Did he say his name?" "No. Just Ethan." The room went silent except for the hiss of oxygen. Grace closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Ethan," she repeated, the name tasting like a memory she both craved and feared. Lily frowned. "Mama? Do you know him?" Grace forced a smile, brushing away her tears. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just rest now." But long after Lily fell asleep, Grace sat awake, staring at the necklace around her daughter's neck. A symbol of a love story that never ended, just changed shape. Outside, the rain drummed softly against the window, like the universe holding its breath. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. The next afternoon, the millionaire returned. But what waited for him in that tiny apartment would not only reopen old wounds but also teach him the meaning of forgiveness. The following day, sunlight crept gently through the curtains of their small apartment. Lily was already awake, fixing her mother's blanket, brushing her hair with delicate care. Grace's eyes opened slowly. She looked fragile, almost transparent beneath the morning light. "Today's the day," Lily said with a bright smile. "The man I told you about, Ethan, he said he'd come." Grace's hands trembled slightly. "Maybe it's just someone who wants to help. Darling, don't expect too much." But her voice carried something else, a quiet storm of fear and longing. By noon, the knock came. Lily rushed to open the door, excitement lighting her face. "You came," she exclaimed. Ethan stood there, holding a small bouquet of lilies, white, pure, fragile like the girl herself. His suit was replaced with a simple gray sweater, his expression uncertain, as though stepping into this small home meant stepping back in time. When Grace saw him, the world stopped moving. Her lips parted, her fingers gripping the blanket tighter. The years fell away in an instant. The laughter, the heartbreak, the night he left. Ethan froze at the doorway, every memory flooding back. "Grace," he breathed. You shouldn't be here," she interrupted softly, voice breaking. "Not after all this time." Lily's eyes darted between them, confusion clouding her joy. "Mama, you know him?" Grace swallowed hard, her voice trembling. An old friend. Old friend. The phrase cut through Ethan like glass. He wanted to say, "I was more than that," but guilt kept his tongue still. He stepped closer, setting the flowers beside her bed. "I heard about your illness," he said gently. "I want to help." "You've done enough," she whispered, looking away. "You helped me once by leaving, so I'd learn not to depend on anyone." The air between them tightened. Lily watched silently, not understanding, only feeling the heavy sadness that filled the room. Ethan's gaze fell on the necklace again, that small silver locket shining faintly against Lily's chest. "You kept it," he said quietly. Grace closed her eyes. "I gave it to her. So at least something good came from it." Tears stung the edges of his vision. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. "I didn't come to hurt you again. I came to make things right. This," he placed the envelope on the table. "It's for her treatment." Grace shook her head weakly. "Money won't fix the years you missed, Ethan." "I know," he replied, voice breaking. "But maybe it can buy her time. And maybe I can try to make up for what I broke." For a long moment, silence filled the room. The kind of silence that holds both forgiveness and pain in the same breath. Then, slowly, Grace nodded. "If it's for Lily, I'll accept." Lily looked between them, still lost but touched by the sincerity in Ethan's voice. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan," she said softly. "Mama always said angels come when you least expect them." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just late." That evening, he stayed longer than he planned. He helped fix the leaky faucet, changed a flickering bulb, even cooked soup while Grace rested. Every small gesture felt like a piece of his old life returning. When Lily sang softly that night, Ethan sat beside her mother, listening to the child's pure voice wrap around their broken pieces. He closed his eyes, tears slipping quietly down. Grace watched him, not with anger, but with the quiet understanding that comes from time and loss. "You always cried when I sang," she whispered. He smiled through his tears. "Because you always made me feel something I didn't deserve." Outside, the rain had stopped, and a faint rainbow lingered over the skyline, a fragile bridge between past and present. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." A week later, the results came in, thin sheets of paper that carried the weight of worlds. Grace sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she opened the envelope from the hospital. Lily stood beside her, clutching her mother's arm, while Ethan watched from across the room, afraid to breathe. Grace's eyes scanned the words slowly. Her lips quivered, her shoulders fell. The silence that followed was the kind that could break hearts. "Mama," Lily whispered. Grace blinked, forcing a smile that couldn't reach her eyes. It's getting worse, sweetheart." Lily's face dropped, her little hands clenching into fists. No, you said the medicine was helping." Ethan stepped forward, his chest tightening. "There has to be something else, another treatment, another hospital." Grace shook her head. "There is, but it costs too much." Her voice trembled, but she hid her fear behind a tired smile. "It's okay. I've had a good life." Lily's tears fell freely now. "No, Mama. You promised we'd see the ocean together." Grace cupped her daughter's cheek. "Then sing for me, Lily. Sing me the ocean." Her words shattered Ethan. He turned away, his eyes wet, guilt rising like a storm. The necklace glimmered again, catching the light, an echo of promises broken long ago. Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep beside her mother, Ethan stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched beneath him, alive and distant. He pulled out his phone and called someone. "Daniel," he said, voice low and heavy. "Find me the best specialist in the state. I don't care what it costs." The man on the other end hesitated. "That's going to be expensive, Ethan." "I owe her more than money," he said, ending the call. Inside, Grace stirred. "You shouldn't do this," she whispered weakly. He turned. "Do what?" "Carry my burden." "It's not a burden," he said. "It's the consequence of my choices." Grace looked at him, her eyes tired but soft. "You left because you were scared of being poor. Now you're rich but hollow. Don't try to buy back time. It doesn't work that way." Ethan knelt beside her. "Maybe not. But I can give you a chance to see Lily grow up. That's worth everything." She smiled faintly, tears pooling in her eyes. "You haven't changed. Still stubborn. Still kind in the most painful way." He took her hand gently, the years between them melting for a moment. "Maybe it's not too late." "Maybe," she whispered, her hand resting over his. For a while, they just sat in silence, the rhythm of Lily's soft breathing filling the room. Outside, the moon rose high, pale and watchful. The next morning, Ethan arranged everything: doctors, transport, expenses. He even pulled strings to move Grace up the waiting list. When Lily woke, she found breakfast already made and Ethan humming one of her songs. "You're staying?" she asked hopefully. He smiled. "For as long as you'll let me." Lily's grin returned, small but bright. "Then you're family now." The word family hit him harder than she could ever know. That day, they drove to the hospital together. Lily sat in the back, holding Grace's hand, while Ethan stared ahead, the road blurring with the weight of all the things left unsaid. At the hospital, as nurses took Grace inside for new tests, Lily waited outside with Ethan. She turned to him suddenly. "Mr. Ethan, why did you cry when you saw my necklace?" He froze. The truth pressed against his throat, heavy and raw. "Because it reminded me of someone I hurt. Someone I still care about." Lily tilted her head. "Was it my mom?" He couldn't lie. Yes, it was her. Lily looked down, her fingers tracing the locket. "Then maybe this necklace brought you back for a reason." Ethan smiled through a tear. "Maybe it did. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't." The doctor's voice was calm, but his eyes carried sorrow. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Grace's condition is more complicated than we thought. It's not just her lungs, her heart is weakening too. The infection has spread." Ethan felt the words hit like stones. Grace lay in the hospital bed, pale and fragile, her breathing uneven. Lily sat beside her, holding her mother's fingers as if her grip alone could keep her alive. "Is there anything you can do?" Ethan asked, his voice strained. "There's an advanced treatment," the doctor replied carefully. "It's experimental, but it could help. The issue is cost, and her body may not handle it." Grace turned her face toward them, her eyes glassy yet still full of quiet grace. "No more treatments," she whispered. "I don't want Lily to see me suffer longer." Lily's head shot up. "No, Mama, please. You have to try." Tears blurred Ethan's vision. "Grace, please don't say that. Let me do this for you." She smiled faintly, the corners of her lips trembling. "You already are. You came back." That night, as the machines hummed softly, Ethan sat by the window, watching the rain begin to fall again. He remembered another night long ago, Grace laughing under an umbrella, her hair damp from the storm, her eyes filled with dreams. He had walked away from that moment to chase success, thinking love could wait. Now, it was love teaching him what success could never give. Grace opened her eyes. "Do you still have that restlessness, Ethan? That fear of losing everything?" He turned to her, voice low. "I already lost everything when I left you." She smiled weakly. Then maybe you've found it again. Lily, half asleep in the chair beside them, stirred and murmured something. Mema, sing. Grace looked at Ethan. I can't. He shook his head. You don't have to. She already sings for both of you. They both glanced at the small girl, her hand resting over her mother's. Her tiny necklace glimmered under the sterile hospital light. Ethan's heart broke and healed at once. Days passed in slow motion. Ethan brought food, flowers, even small gifts for Lily, coloring books, ribbons, a new microphone. He became part of their world, the world he once abandoned. One evening, as Grace drifted between sleep and wakefulness, Ethan found her journal on the bedside table. He hesitated, then opened it gently. Inside, her handwriting flowed across the pages. Letters never sent, thoughts never spoken. Ethan, if you ever come back, don't come to fix me. Just come to see how much love survived without you. The words blurred before his eyes. He closed the journal, pressing his palm against the cover as though to steady his trembling heart. Later, he stepped outside the hospital, the night cool and quiet. Lily followed him, her eyes wide and curious. Are you sad? She asked. He knelt down. Sometimes. Grown-ups make mistakes they can't undo. She tilted her head. Then you should sing like I do. Singing makes the sad part smaller. Ethan smiled, tears slipping down his face. Maybe you can teach me. The next day, Lily sang again in the hospital courtyard. Her soft voice echoed through the hallways, drawing nurses and patients to listen. She sang about love that waits, about promises kept too late but still kept somehow. And as she sang, Grace smiled faintly from her bed upstairs, feeling every note like a heartbeat shared across time. Ethan stood behind her wheelchair, watching. The necklace sparkled against Lily's throat, catching the light of the setting sun. He whispered to himself, Grace, I see you in her. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't about forgiveness alone. It was about redemption. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. But fate, cruel and kind as ever, wasn't done yet. That same night, as laughter briefly returned to their lives, Grace's heart monitor began to beep erratically, and Lily's song was cut short by the sound of nurses rushing in. The hospital room filled with alarm. The steady rhythm of Grace's heart monitor fractured into chaos. Long, uneven beeps that sliced through the air. Lily froze mid-note, her microphone slipping from her hand. Nurses stormed in, their voices sharp and urgent. Please step back, one called as they surrounded Grace's bed. Mama! Lily screamed, trying to push through, but Ethan caught her in his arms, holding her trembling body close. Let them help her, sweetheart, he whispered, though his own voice shook with fear. He watched helplessly as doctors worked. Chest compressions, oxygen adjustments, needles, wires, time losing all meaning. Grace's body jolted, then went still. For a terrifying moment, the monitor flatlined. No, Ethan breathed, stepping forward. Grace, stay with me, please. A nurse called out, we have a pulse. The line flickered back to life, weak but steady. Relief broke through like a gasp of air after drowning. Lily collapsed against Ethan's chest, sobbing. Minutes later, the chaos settled. The doctors left with quiet nods, and Grace lay motionless, pale as dawn. Ethan brushed her hair back gently. You scared us, he whispered. Grace's eyes fluttered open faintly. Guess I still know how to make an entrance, she murmured, her voice barely a breath. Lily wiped her tears, half laughing, half crying. Don't joke like that, Mema. Ethan smiled weakly. You just gave me 10 years of fear in 10 seconds. Grace looked between them, exhaustion and peace blending in her expression. Maybe that's what I needed, she said softly. To see you both together. To know she's not alone anymore. Ethan shook his head. Don't talk like that. You're going to get better. But Grace smiled that knowing smile, the one that saw through lies dressed as hope. Ethan, listen. Promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't leave her. Don't let her sing for survival anymore. Let her sing for joy. He blinked back tears. Don't say when, Grace. Say if. She reached up, her trembling fingers brushing his cheek. You always were bad at accepting the truth. Lily climbed onto the bed gently, curling beside her mother. Grace's hand moved to the locket on her daughter's neck, fingers tracing its edges like it carried everything she wanted to say. I kept this, she whispered, because even when you left, Ethan, I believed that love somehow finds its way back. Ethan pressed her hand to his lips. It did. A hush filled the room, the kind that comes when hearts speak louder than words. That night, Lily refused to go home. She sat by her mother's side, singing softly, a lullaby this time, a song of staying, not leaving. Ethan stayed too, sitting on the chair by the window, his eyes never leaving Grace. In the quiet, Grace drifted in and out of sleep. At one point, she stirred and whispered, Do you remember the first time I sang for you? Ethan nodded, smiling through tears. At that cafe near the bridge. You sang off-key, but you were radiant. She laughed weakly. I did that on purpose, so you'd remember me. He chuckled, brushing away a tear. Worked better than you thought. Outside, the city lights blurred against the night rain, turning everything gold and soft. Lily's voice hummed quietly, like a thread sewing broken souls together. Grace's breathing slowed, each inhale shallow, fragile. Ethan felt the panic rise again. He reached for her hand. Stay with us. Please. Her lips curved faintly. You already have me. Always. Then, just as gently as the rain on glass, she slipped into sleep again, peaceful this time. Ethan sat back, exhaling shakily. He glanced at Lily, who was still singing, her voice trembling but strong. It hit him then, the strength of this little girl, this echo of Grace, this reason to keep believing. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds. Grace's bed was empty, not cold, but calm, and Lily's voice broke the silence with one final song, one that made Ethan realize what Grace had truly left behind. The morning light entered like a whisper, soft and golden, dust motes floating gently through the hospital room. Ethan stirred awake in the chair, neck stiff, the faint hum of machines now replaced by silence. He blinked, trying to orient himself. Then he saw Lily standing at the bedside, still, her small hand clutching the locket at her chest. The bed was empty. Grace's blanket was folded neatly, her pillow untouched. For a moment, Ethan didn't understand. Then it hit him, not as a sudden blow, but as a slow, crushing wave. No, his voice cracked. Lily turned to him, her eyes wide, glistening, too calm for a child who had lost everything. She left while you were sleeping, she whispered. She smiled before she went. Ethan's knees gave out. He sank to the floor beside the bed, covering his face. I should have stayed awake. I should have. Lily knelt beside him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mama said not to cry. She said love doesn't die, it just changes who it lives inside. Her tiny voice shattered him. He pulled her close, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. For the first time, he allowed the grief to pour out, raw, unrestrained, human. The nurses entered quietly, placing a white rose on the table before leaving them alone again. Outside the window, the city carried on as if nothing had changed. But for Ethan and Lily, everything had. That evening, the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and rose, painting the world like a memory too beautiful to last. Ethan took Lily to the small park across from the hospital. They sat on a bench, silence stretching between them. Finally, she whispered, "What happens now?" Ethan looked at her, this brave, fragile little soul who had inherited her mother's light. "Now," he said softly, "now, we live the way she wanted us to." Lily looked down. She wanted me to keep singing. "Then we'll sing," he said. "Together." The next day, he took her back to the same street corner where they first met. The microphone still stood there, old and rusted, wires frayed but faithful. Lily held it like an old friend. The crowd gathered slowly, familiar faces, strangers passing by. When she began to sing, her voice wove through the air, gentler than before but deeper, wiser, carrying both pain and peace. Ethan stood beside her this time, not watching from afar but as part of her story. The lyrics told of love lost and found, of mothers who never really leave, of forgiveness that heals what time cannot. People stopped. Some cried quietly. Some smiled through tears. And when Lily finished, there was no applause, just silence thick with emotion. Ethan knelt beside her. She heard that, you know. Lily nodded. I felt it. He smiled faintly. Me too. They sat there until the crowd dispersed, the city lights flickering to life one by one. Lily leaned against him. Do you think Mama's proud? Ethan's voice trembled. She's singing with you, right now. A single tear slipped down Lily's cheek, catching the glow of the streetlight. Then I'll keep singing, so she never has to stop. He brushed her hair gently, whispering, You have her heart, Lily, and I'll make sure the world hears it. Days turned to weeks. Ethan arranged for Lily to attend school again, enrolled her in music classes, and moved them into a small house near the ocean, just like Grace had always dreamed. Each evening, Lily sang by the water, her voice blending with the rhythm of the waves. Ethan would sit nearby, eyes closed, hearing Grace in every note. One evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, Lily turned and smiled. Mr. Ethan. Yes, sweetheart. Can I call you Dad? He froze, breath catching in his chest. Then, slowly, tears filled his eyes. You already do, he said softly. They sat together, watching the sky turn crimson, the ocean whispering promises only hearts could hear. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had transformed, the way Grace said it would. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you. And somewhere, beyond the reach of sorrow, Grace watched them. Her daughter and the man who finally learned what love truly meant, smiling through a sky painted in light. Months passed like chapters closing softly. The world had found its rhythm again. But for Ethan and Lily, every day still began and ended with the echo of Grace's laughter. The ocean had become their cathedral, the place where Lily sang, where memories felt alive, where healing met hope. On one golden afternoon, the waves lapped at the shore as Lily stood barefoot in the sand, microphone in hand. The necklace glimmered under the sunlight, catching tiny flecks of gold that danced across her skin. Ethan watched from a few steps away, camera rolling, capturing what had become their Sunday ritual, Lily's songs for Mama. Each week, people gathered, locals, tourists, strangers who'd once passed her by without a glance. Now they came to listen, to feel something real again. Her voice had grown, not louder, but deeper, wiser. It carried loss, but also warmth. The kind of voice that healed what it touched. After her final note faded into the breeze, she looked toward the sea and whispered, Did you hear me, Mama? Ethan walked over, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She never misses a song. Lily smiled, blinking up at him. You really think she's still here? He nodded. Everywhere. In the waves, in your voice, even in me. They walked together along the water's edge, the setting sun painting the sky in ribbons of orange and violet. Ethan glanced at her, the child who had once sung on a cold street corner, hoping to heal her mother with $1 and a song. Now, she was healing others instead. As they reached a small pier, Lily noticed something tucked beneath the railing. A tiny wooden box, weathered by salt and time. A note was tied around it. She untied it carefully. For Lily, from someone who still believes in miracles. Inside was a delicate silver charm shaped like a musical note, engraved with the words Sing for the ones who listen from heaven. Lily gasped softly. It's beautiful. Ethan smiled. Maybe that's her way of saying thank you. Tears welled in her eyes. Then I'll never stop singing. They sat on the edge of the pier, watching the sun dip lower, silence stretching. The kind of silence that holds peace instead of pain. Ethan finally spoke, his voice quiet. You know, I spent years thinking success meant never looking back. But your mom, she taught me that love is what makes us truly rich. Lily leaned against his arm. She told me that too. She said money can buy comfort, but only love buys time worth remembering. He chuckled softly. She was right. She always was. The waves whispered against the wood, steady and eternal. The locket around Lily's neck caught the last light of the sun, glowing as if alive. Ethan reached over and opened it. Inside was a tiny photo, faded but clear enough. Grace holding baby Lily, smiling with a joy that outshone the years. Ethan stared at it for a long time, then closed it gently. We'll keep her story alive, he said. Every note you sing, every person you touch, she lives through that. Lily nodded. Then she'll live forever. That night, back home, Ethan sat at his desk, looking out at the ocean through the open window. The moonlight poured across the floor, silver and soft. On his desk lay Grace's journal. He opened it to the last page, where her handwriting, fragile but steady, read. If you're reading this, Ethan, thank you for finding your way back, not to me, but to love itself. Take care of our little songbird. Let her remind the world that pain can sing too, and still sound beautiful. He closed the book, tears rolling freely now, not from sorrow but from something gentler, acceptance. He whispered, I will. I promise. Down the hall, Lily's soft humming floated through the house, blending with the rhythm of the sea outside. Ethan smiled, letting the melody carry him into quiet peace. The story had come full circle. A poor girl who sang for her mother had found more than help. She had found the power to heal others through her music. And a man who once measured life in wealth now measured it in heartbeats shared, laughter remembered, and songs that reached the heavens. The world still rushed by outside, chasing noise and gold, but here, in this little home by the sea, time slowed enough for love to echo. And somewhere beyond the clouds, Grace smiled, proud, peaceful, eternal. Final moral. Love doesn't fade when life ends. It transforms into every act of kindness, every song, every heartbeat that still remembers. When you choose love over regret, you don't just heal. You become someone's reason to believe again.